At 02:40 hours on March 27, 1945, the night over Tinian Island felt unnaturally still. Floodlights washed over rows of silver aircraft lined along North Field, their shadows stretching across the coral runway like silent warnings. One of them, a Boeing B-29 Superfortress named Iron Reaper, waited at the edge of the Hardst and, fully fueled, fully armed, and heavy with what lay ahead. Captain William Harrington climbed into the cockpit and paused before strapping in. He had flown 36 missions already. He knew the sounds, the smells, the routines. Still, his hands hesitated for just a moment, as if his body sensed something his mind refused to name. Behind him, the crew settled into their stations. Navigator Harold Stein unfolded his charts under a dim red light. Radar operator Joe Ramirez adjusted his headset as static whispered in his ears. In the rear, the gunners checked ammunition belts, metal links clinking softly in the cold air. "Same target as last week," co-pilot Frank Delaney said quietly. "Tokyo Industrial Zone, in and out." Harrington nodded, eyes forward, "if the weather holds, and if they let us." The ground crew pulled away. One by one, the four Wright R-3003, 150 engines came alive, their thunder shaking the aircraft. Heat shimmered behind the propellers as Iron Reaper began to taxi, joining a slow procession of superfortresses rolling toward the runway. Dozens of aircraft, hundreds of men, one mission. At 03:12, the bomber lifted off, the wheels left the ground, the island dropped away, and the Pacific swallowed the sound of departure as Iron Reaper climbed into darkness. Hours passed in engine noise and oxygen masks. At cruising altitude, the cold outside was lethal, frost creeping along the windows. Inside the pressurized cabin, the crew spoke little. Each man sat with his own thoughts, staring at instruments or into nothing at all. Far ahead, faint glows marked the Japanese coastline. As dawn approached, radar contacts began to appear, picking up flak bursts ahead. Ramirez said, "Heavy concentrations." Moments later, black clouds bloomed outside as anti-aircraft fire climbed to meet them. The bomber shuddered when fragments struck the fuselage, metallic clangs echoing through the airframe. "Hold her steady," Stein said. "You're drifting left." Then the warning came, multiple bogies, fast climbers coming up from below. Dark shapes rose through broken cloud, engines screaming. Japanese fighters angled straight toward the formation. Fighters at 6 o'clock high. The tail gunner shouted. Tracer fire slashed the sky. The top turret answered, streams of 50. Caliber rounds tearing past the cockpit. One fighter rolled away trailing smoke and vanished downward. Got one. Someone yelled. There was no time to celebrate. A second fighter came in too fast, too close. The aircraft lurched violently as metal smashed into metal. The left wing jolted, fuel spraying into the slipstream. "He rammed us," Delaney shouted. Before anyone could react, another impact slammed into the tail. The rear fuselage buckled. Smoke flooded the tail gunner's compartment as warning lights flashed across the cockpit. "Tail controls damaged," Harrington shouted, wrestling the yoke as Iron Reaper dropped sharply. For a terrifying second, the bomber felt weightless, on the edge of falling apart. Then the nose leveled. The engines held. No one spoke. Two enemy pilots had chosen death by collision rather than let the bomber pass. Outside, more fighters were already lining up for another attack. Iron Reaper pushed forward, damaged but airborne, her formation thinning as crippled bombers peeled away or fell behind. One engine ran hot, its temperature needle trembling near the danger line. "Keep her at this power," Harrington said calmly. "If we pull back now, they'll finish us." The next wave came in low and fast. A Ki-84 streaked across the bomber's nose, cannons flashing. The nose gunner fired short, controlled bursts. Tracers walked into the fighter, and it exploded in a sudden flash that lit the cockpit like lightning. 2 o'clock, another one. The right gunner shouted. The central fire control system hummed as turrets slewed in unison. Twin 50s roared. A Zero rolled onto its back, its wing torn cleanly away, and vanished into cloud. Smoke now streamed from Iron Reaper's tail, but she stayed level. "Ammo's running low back here." The tail gunner said through strained breaths, "But I'm still in it." "You're doing fine." Harrington replied, "Just hang on." Below them, Tokyo emerged through haze and smoke. Searchlights stabbed upward, white fingers clawing at the bombers. Flak intensified, shaking the aircraft again and again as shrapnel tore holes through aluminum skin. Bomb bay doors in 30 seconds, the bombardier called. Another fighter dove straight down the bomber's throat. All guns front, Harrington shouted. Every turret fired at once. Tracers converged and the fighter disintegrated less than 100 yards away. "Clear," someone yelled, "bombs away." The aircraft leapt upward as its load dropped free. Below, the city erupted. Fire spread block by block, merging into rolling waves of flame. Thick columns of smoke swallowed streets, factories, rail yards. For a moment no one spoke. Then came the call again. More bogies. Last group, 12 o'clock high. The final attackers came in scattered pairs, low on fuel, formations broken. One after another, they were met by disciplined fire. A Haid burst apart mid-dive. Another spun down, trailing flame. A third broke off, smoking heavily, and vanished east. Silence followed. Only engine noise remained, counting 14. The gunnery officer said quietly, 14 confirmed. No one cheered. The flight home was long and tense. One engine had to be throttled back. Oil pressure bled away. The tail gunner's wound was bandaged as best as possible, his voice fading with each hour. Clouds swallowed the bomber as it crossed open ocean, the Pacific calm and indifferent beneath them. At last, Tinian appeared on the horizon, field in sight. Stein said, relief breaking through his voice, "Iron Reaper, touchdown hard but straight, tires screaming against the runway." As the engines wound down, the crew sat in silence, hands shaking now that there was nothing left to do. Ground crews stared at the shattered tail, the scorched wings, the holes torn through steel and aluminum. 2 days later, the numbers would be written into reports. 14 enemy fighters destroyed, 2 by collision, mission successful, crew survived. The names of the Japanese pilots would never be known to them. Within weeks, Iron Reaper sat at the edge of the field under the sun, damage marked in chalk. Mechanics traced shrapnel holes and shook their heads. She would never fly again. The crew dispersed quietly. Ramirez wrote letters he never sent. The tail gunner carried a limp for the rest of his life. Stein returned to charts that now measured distances between memory and home. Harrington watched new formations lift into the sky and stopped counting once they vanished into cloud. Across the ocean, Tokyo smoldered. Civilians sifted through ash. The pilots who rammed the bomber were honored as fallen defenders, their photographs placed in silent rooms where families bowed without words. When the war ended, it did so without ceremony. No music when engines shut down for the last time. Just ships heading home, trains rolling inland, and men learning how to be ordinary again. Years later, Iron Reaper existed only as a footnote. 14 fighters destroyed by a single bomber crew. The numbers survived. The fear did not. Decades passed. Harrington attended a reunion wearing no uniform, only a small pin. When someone mentioned the night over Tokyo, the room grew quiet. Someone asked how it felt to destroy 14 enemy fighters. Harrington thought for a long moment. It felt like surviving. He said, "Nothing more." In Japan, one of the pilots' names was etched into stone among thousands of others. Children passed it on school trips, pausing briefly before moving on. 2 lives that never met, bound forever by the same sky. The bomber itself was gone, melted down into something unrecognizable. The guns were silent. The engines long dismantled. Yet the story endured in pauses between words, in hands that trembled without reason, in the understanding that history is not written only by victories, but by endurance. In his final years, Harrington woke before dawn out of habit and watched the sky change color. When asked if the mission had been worth it, he spoke instead of the men, of Delaney's jokes, of Stein's careful maps, of a wounded gunner who never stopped calling targets. Worth it isn't the right word. He said, "It just happened, and we carried it." After he passed, there was no flyover. just a folded flag and quiet afternoon light. Time softened the scars of war, cities rebuilt, jets crossed peaceful skies, children looked up and saw nothing threatening there. That may be the greatest outcome any war story can hope for, because the legacy of that night is not destruction, but remembrance. Not triumph, but warning. A reminder that courage can exist alongside fear, that survival carries its own weight, and that peace is never automatic. The engines are silent now, the sky endures. And the responsibility to remember remains, so that future skies may stay empty of war and full only of possibility.